Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are the Sun's football editor, Charlie Wyatt, and the Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross. Welcome, gentlemen, to you both. Let's quickly run everyone through the back pages then, starting with the Mirror, John's paper. They splash with Saka as Arsenal fans get the injury news they were dreading on their star forward. There's also a story on the sidebar about Virgil van Dijks' contract as he waits on an improved offer. The Times reports that the problems caused by Saka's injury may force Arsenal into the January transfer market. Remember, clubs can start making deals again in a little over a week. Charlie's paper, The Sun, is one of several papers to report on the issues around Marcus Rashford, with Ruben Amarin none too happy about the advice the player might be receiving from those around him. Top left, there's also news of Ben Stokes needing surgery. And after the leaking roof at Old Trafford, the Mail has an exclusive on the latest woe to befall the club. They say the stadium has been hit by an infestation of mice, which has seen their food hygiene rating affected. OK, let's start with the Mirror. John, your paper. Bukayo Saka, hamstring injury, just the last player that Arsenal would have wanted to have got injured. This is a serious blow for them and their title aspirations.
It's a devastating blow for Arsenal. Devastating blow also for Bukayo Saka, of course, the player at the heart of this. So important to Arsenal. So important to the title challenge. Of course, such a reliable source of goals and assists. He's also so reliable for turning up each and every week. And I do think this kind of cuts to the chase, really, that, you know, have Arsenal overplayed him? I do think there's a strong argument that they clearly have. I mean, look, our reading of it is that he's facing 8 weeks on the sidelines at the very least. I think the earliest return with a torn hamstring might be the end of February. Look, I do think the early prognosis was perhaps even worse. So he could have even faced an even longer spell out. When you looked at it and when you saw him leaving Selhurst Park on Saturday on crutches, I think it was an alarming sight for Arsenal fans to see. But if you look at the numbers, it's remarkable how many games that Saka has played. You know, he set a record, I think, not so long back, really, last season for the number of successive Premier League appearances, 87 in total. He's one of the most played players in the whole of the Premier League. When does the guy ever get a rest? I'll tell you what, he didn't even get a rest when Arsenal played in the Carabao Cup at Preston. He even came on a substitute against Palace in the Carabao Cup. I mean, honestly, every single time, every single game, he's the guy that sort of Mikel Arteta turns to. And I'm sorry, but I do think this one has kind of come back to bite them, really. I think Arteta's played him far too much, relied on him far too often. And really, Arsenal then now feeling the cost of that, I'm afraid. He's been overplayed, overloaded.
Charlie, what's your take on this? Saka played too much. I mean, as I say, it's easy with hindsight, but a lot of people have been making this point for a while, that he plays a lot, and in fixtures like John mentions, that perhaps he doesn't need to.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's missed 7 games in 3.5 years. That's a lot of football. And let's not forget, these players now, they're not playing a lot. The intensity and those levels are much higher than they used to be. And so the demand on these players, and I obviously feel, sorry for Saka because he has been overused. I don't have a lot of sympathy for Arteta, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for all the other managers, particularly with Guardiola, Klopp a lot last season, who've complained about the amount of games that they're having to play. Yet they've got huge squads, particularly Arsenal, and of course even more so Manchester City and Chelsea. They've got they could all field a really strong second 11. They all pay lots of money to recruit the top youngsters from all. They nick all these great players from the EFL, and it's quite rare we see a big club field an 18-year-old. It does happen, but not that much, and it should do more. They should be giving these players more of a rest. Klopp and Guardiola again with the managers, and Arteta that wanted 5 substitutes, and they got their way, which I think was a huge benefit to the big clubs. Yet even so, Saka's been playing every week, and it is inevitable. And And let's hope maybe a few other managers will look at the Saka situation and learn from it, but they probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, John, we also mentioned there's a couple of Euros and a World Cup in there that he's played. He was pretty much ever present for England, wasn't he, in the summer? You mentioned Arteta in terms of playing him all the time, but also is there the lack of recruitment? You know, a lot of the top teams, and Arsenal was supposed to be a top team, have cover in every position to make sure this doesn't happen. They don't have a lot of cover in that wide right area.
No, they don't. Look, Raheem Sterling was brought in the summer as an emergency last-minute loan deal, wasn't it? And you have to feel sorry for him because although clearly it's not as bad as injury as Saka has suffered, you know, he did at the back end of last week sort of feel a tweak in training, came off, and the one time that he might get an opening and a run of games with Saka out, he's out injured. You know, the hope is that obviously it won't be quite as long as that. But, you know, what do they do next? What really interested me today, Dave, was it sort of kind of in front of the TV cameras, was that Arteta was talking about a very thin squad. They knew that they were going into the season with a thin squad. Well, actually, that could easily be interpreted as something of a bit of a dig, really, at the club kind of, you know, with a thin squad. And look, if you ask a lot of Arsenal fans, they sort of say, well, this season's been a bit disappointing, frankly, because they expected sort of a bit more of a title challenge. They expected to be at the top, really. This was their opportunity with Man City falling away. But what did they do in the market? You know, they signed a kind of a left back who's been a bit injury prone. And sort of another sort of defensive-minded midfielder. It seems a bit underwhelming, really. And so I do think that Arsenal have left themselves short of options. Listen, at the heart of this is that Saka is an absolute national treasure. He's absolutely sensational for club and country. He's undroppable. He's so good. I think he's absolutely fabulous as a player, as a person, as a character. He's brilliant. He's, you know, Gareth Southgate, he used to joke, didn't he? He was the kid that he used to wish that sort of kind of his daughter would bring home to dinner, basically, because he's so likeable and such a smashing sort of footballer, but a great character as well. So your heart really goes out to him. And also, it also reflects that managers don't feel that they can leave him out because he's that good. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to make those sort of tough decisions. And at the heart of that, you also have to say, we need a decent depth of squad. And it feels like Arsenal have come up short this season. So, yeah, again, it's another reason, you know, to sort of have a little look at sort of the planning that sort of has gone into this title challenge, which has fallen short so far.
Yeah, well, so far. But let's talk about that planning then, because it could change because the window opens in just over a week, Charlie, of course. The Times says that injuries may force Arsenal to strengthen. Gary Jacob writes that Mikel Arteta is ready to strengthen his Arsenal squad in the transfer window. This will please Arsenal fans if this is true.
But, you know, Arsenal might be looking to recruit, but of course, you know, it's easier said than done. The last few windows in January, we've seen not too many big signings because clubs know they're going to have to overpay. We've obviously had, you know, PSR rules as well. They've come into play. And a lot of teams, of course, are really not very keen on letting their key players go at such an important part of the season. So I think even if Arsenal do want to strengthen, I think they're going to have a real tough test. And I think we're going to see that the same elsewhere. Of course, I think some Arsenal fans would love to see a central striker, maybe, you know, bring in, you know, Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. But again, that would cost them £70 million. And I think in January that would be unlikely.
Yeah, well, let's move on to Manchester United and Marcus Rashford, because Gyökeres, of course, a former or a Ruben Amarin player at Sporting Lisbon. The Sun talks about this. Marcus Rashford, John, looks like Ruben Amarin thinks he might be badly advised.
Yeah, this is Amarin, you know, I think quotes to Sky, wasn't it? Sort of basically a very honest and frank interview. He's obviously left him out the last 3 games after Marcus Rashford gave that kind of bombshell interview to a regular on here, Henry Winter, you know. And I mean, of all bizarre things, it was at his old school visit, you know, sort of kind of to delight the kids at Christmas. And, you know, it was a sort of a strange setting, but it was searingly honest. And I did admire what he said. You know, this is a guy who's clearly passionate about Manchester United and about the fans and about the club and wants to do the right thing, but also sort of saying, look, I think I need a fresh challenge. You know, Amarin's clearly going to be disappointed about those words. I did think it came from the heart and sounded it sounded good, but you'd have to question really the sort of the timing of it. listen, I'm never going to, as a journalist, criticise another journalist for getting an interview and getting an interview out there. But you know, I do wonder sometimes about the advice. I'm someone that really passionately believes in football agents and good agents. A good agent is a mentor, a guide, a father figure, a brother, advisor, a coach. He's absolutely everything. The best agents absolutely, you know, really guide that player. And I do feel as if Rashford just continually making bad choices at the moment. You have to question. I do think Amarin's probably got a point. You know, does he really need to go to, you know, New York, for example, to go and see a sporting event just before the new manager comes in? What about last year? You know, with the kind of the nightclub incident, sort of Belfast. You know, really, I do think those sort of things that you can't surround yourself with sycophants not giving you strong guidance and advice. Marcus Rashford is a world-class talent in my view, but he hasn't shown that talent for quite some time. And he needs honesty, he needs proper guidance, he needs proper people around him. I can understand Amarin's frustration on this one, I must say.
Charlie, is this perhaps quite a clever move from Amarin? Because he's not... He says he wants to support his player. He's almost shifting the blame a little bit to the people around him. Is that a bit of an olive branch to Marcus that says, you know, if you get your act together here, we can sit down, we can talk about this, and we can still get you back playing for Manchester United?
Yeah, I agree with you. First of all, I think it's some clever deflection on the back of a really bad home defeat to Bournemouth. We're talking about Marcus Rashford now, aren't we? Not another terrible Manchester United performance. And yes, I think Amarin was careful to sort of, you know, throw it in the direction of those who might be advising Rashford. The only thing I'd say is that Marcus Rashford is 27. You know, he's not 18. He's not 19. You know, he's made some good choices in the past. You know, he's a grown man here. So for a start, you would expect him to make the right decisions. But of course, it'd be naive to think otherwise, that these players don't have advisors. Some have good agents, some have bad agents, some have family members that give good advice or bad advice, and other players have this new breed of PRs, public relations experts, and some are good and some are really, really bad. And as John said, you know, great to get from Henry Winter, and if me or John had been offered that interview, we'd have snapped it up as well. I'm not quite sure what Marcus Rashford, how he's benefited from this, other than to really annoy his manager. And I think there might be a way back for him. But I think if Rashford thinks he needs a new challenge, I think Amarin probably feels that way as well.
OK. Charlie, I'm going to come to you on this one. We're going to move away from Marcus Rashford. We're going to stay with Manchester United. The back of the mail. We heard about the leaking roofs, of course, and rain coming down on Ruben Amarin as if he needs anything else coming down on his head. But now United hit by mice outbreak. Old Trafford hygiene rating plummets after rodent droppings are found in the food kiosk. I mean, we know they're going to try and do the stadium, you know, sort the stadium out and everything else, but it's just something else they can do without. It's like everyone's jumping on this bandwagon of United falling apart.
I'll tell you what, United's next home game, in all the hospitality areas, all the diners, this is going to be the conversation they're going to be talking about. Of course, there were no droppings found in the areas where the food is served, but in every single VIP area now, the fans are going to be tucking into their food, talking about, I hope our food's clean, because, it's gone down to 2 stars. And yeah, United's fans will be rolling their eyes at that one, definitely.
Used to 5 stars, now they're 2 stars. Thank you very much for the minute, gentlemen. We are going to take a quick break, and then we will come back with the Telegraph, where Marcus Rashford, as stories continue, and at the bottom of the page, they detail the injury to England captain Ben Stokes. Stay with us. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to the Sun's football editor, Charlie Wyatt, and the Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross. We're going to go straight to the back of the Mirror. Wait goes on for VVD. That is Virgil van Dijk, of course. John, this is your paper, so we'll come to you on this. This is your colleague Alan Smith. He's just basically said no news on a new contract. But given, you both were at the game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Liverpool purring. These contract situations around Van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah, they're the only things that could possibly derail Liverpool at the moment.
They could, but I actually think it's having the opposite effect. I really do. And I think Mo Salah, is clearly up at the end of the season and is playing some of the best football of his life. I think he's more of a moments player now, if that makes sense. So he's kind of, doesn't completely run and rule games, but the key moments in games, he always comes up trumps. He's breaking goal scoring records. And it just feels as if he's so focused, on kind of the end of the season. He won't let the contract dissuade him. But at the same time, he knows he's having to play for this new contract and he's playing for his future. And my word, does it look like it. And I think Van Dijk has been absolutely imperious, absolutely sensational. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, I mean, again, yesterday, what a sensational performance, really, from the fullback area, really, not just as a traditional fullback, but his passing, his range was absolutely out of this world. Look, if I'm a betting man, I do think that Van Dijk and Salah stay. And then I think that Trent Alexander-Arnold, I do think there's a chance that he might see out the end of the contract and Real Madrid are all over him. We know that. They really fancy him and it would be a new football adventure. But I tell you what, for the rest of the season, there's no doubt in my mind that this will not derail those three players. In fact, I almost think that the whole thing and being talked about is actually strengthening their performances. And I just think if they end up winning the title, which I think they will, they're the best team, they're the most consistent team, then I don't think anyone would really begrudge what any of the three of them do. But I do think ultimately, most of them will stay, if not all.
Yeah, Charlie, the Sun kind of echoes what John was saying there. Virgil van Dijk saying Mo, the best is still to come from him. Do you kind of agree with John that you think one will go, two will stay, and does that constitute a win for Liverpool? What's the kind of best and worst case scenarios here and the likely scenario?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously it's easy to criticise Liverpool for allowing, the contracts to run down, the three key players. But it is ever so complicated behind the scenes, and what players are, or their agents are trying to sort of squeeze out of the club. And Mo Salah in previous years has sort of suddenly done interviews with Spanish newspapers when he's been eyeing a move to Real Madrid or Barcelona. Those options aren't there anymore, so his only real chance, realistically, Saudi Arabia. So I think he stays at Anfield. I think Virgil van Dijk equally is so happy there. Going to win more trophies, that's for sure. Again, why would he want to leave? He's already sort of quite well travelled. In contrast, Trent Alexander-Arnold, local lad, been at the club all his life, and I can totally understand why the lure of joining his England mate Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid would be something he could not turn down. So I think there's a strong chance he goes there. I agree with John. I don't think it would derail their title bids. The only thing that could really harm it is Van Dijk or Mo Salah getting injured. But even so far, Liverpool, they've not had it easy with injuries. Don't forget, Alisson's the best keeper in the world, and they haven't had him. And Konaté's been injured as well. So, look, everything's working for them at the moment, and I'm sure they'll get two of the players done to stay for another couple of years at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different dynamic, John, isn't it, with Trent, given he's a local lad. In a way, you'd think he would be the one that where Liverpool is kind of in his blood. I take your point about the age thing. And there's also that kind of, not many players are one-club players these days, but that opportunity as a local lad to be a legend that stays at the club for his whole career versus, as Charlie mentions, Jude Bellingham, his mate at Real Madrid, and just a different life experience, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do think it sparks a little bit of a lively debate between Jamie Carragher and Jamie Redknapp, didn't it, in the coverage yesterday? And I must say, I thought what Jamie Carragher was sort of saying, that basically, he was really making the point, wasn't he, that, the local lads feel it more because there's sort of kind of that greater attachment. So if he was to leave, then maybe there'd be sort of kind of be less forgiving. But I do get that point. I mean, Jamie would play with so many years and such distinction, and he's absolutely been fantastic. His punditry in the last few weeks, I think, on a few things, and I think he's really hit the nail on the head. Really, I do think it's going to be a sort of a tug of the heartstrings for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But this is a guy. Really, can you really begrudge him? Listen, if he was joining another Premier League team, then I could understand that Liverpool fans would be really upset. Of course, they want him to stay. And listen, there's probably a decent chance that he might yet stay if they can find the right deal, if they can find the right offer. Then sort of kind of who knows. And sort of Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think, has handled it really well so far, saying, look, it's not going to play out in public. I do think, money must come into it. I think it must do for a player at the top of the game. The player's always going to kind of be paid what they're worth. Of course they are. We're not naive here. But I think Real Madrid, a different challenge, a different country, playing on that sort of stage as well, will have a lure. His big mate Jude Bellingham is there already. Jude Bellingham has set the world alight. What a fantastic experience it's been for him. He's probably looking at it and thinking, maybe that appeals to me. And honestly, I wouldn't begrudge him of that. I think it would be a sensational experience for him to have. And I think once they got over the initial disappointment, if you like, I think a lot of Liverpool fans would say, particularly, by the way, if he leaves, by helping them win the title, I think they'd wish him well. I do. I think the initial disappointment would be sort of saying, actually, we understand he's done the right thing. He's been a sensational player for this club. And I think we'll remember him, as a really, really top Liverpool lad.
Do you think, Charlie, there's a danger that all three could leave? Given they can leave on a free, means their wage demands, signing on fees, the money that John talks about. And I take your point about maybe Saudi being the only option, but they're going to be offered astronomical fees that Liverpool might not be able to match. If money talks, could all three go? And if that leaks out in January, could that be the thing that puts the skids under this impressive Liverpool team?
No, I don't, because other than Saudi, I know PSG still have a few quid, don't they? But I just don't think the options are there at the moment. While we're seeing a lot of British players play in Italy now, none of those clubs have £400,000 a week to offer any of those three. And equally, as I said earlier, I think Van Dijk's pretty happy on Merseyside. Alexander-Arnold, it would be the money. John is obviously right. It's always about the money with footballers, as it is with any other profession. I'm not just having a dig at the players, but money is the key. But if Trent Alexander-Arnold can get a few more quid, but have a different lifestyle, that's why I think he'll play there. And actually, I think it'll improve him as a player. And I don't think our England manager Tom Tuchel will be too disappointed if he did go to Spain. But equally, I think the fact that we're talking about this situation now and Liverpool are 4 points clear at the top with a game in hand, having just had one defeat all season under Slot, is unbelievable.
Gents, we have run out of time. Thank you very much for your company. Always great value. The Sun, meanwhile, we've been talking about Bukayo Saka's hamstring injury. Stokes op shock. That's from John Etheridge. Ben Stokes out for 3 months. That's in the Sun.